All right. Well, we have our first question. Someone has asked, can you expand on what exactly are executive functions?
Certainly. So frontal cortex, this is the area of the brain that is developed much later. So I say to my students who are 18, 19, 20, 21, that area of their brain still it's evolving and it's integrating itself. So around the age of 25, it's fully integrated. That does not mean that they can do bad things and say, oh, it's my prefrontal cortex is not quite integrated yet. But the inhibitory functions are there. When part of you says, no, I shouldn't be doing that. No, that's the wrong thing to do. No, I shouldn't get upset here. Oh, I was about to yell, oh no, I'm not going to do it. That's part of that. Also, decision making, which is the right decision, it's the wrong decision. But also the executive functions have this programming in them that says that can't be done. That's impossible. No one is going to buy that. Nobody's going to come to see you. Why would they come to see you when somebody else's office is larger, etc.? So only certain things are possible. That's part of it. Our personality is very much in that area, so our personality is actually housed in that area. And because it's the newer, more later development in brain development, it's the most vulnerable area of the brain. So injury to the head, people will say, the personality changed, but also chronic stress, excessive stress, excessive production of the glucocorticoids will damage the prefrontal cortex. Where do we see this? In PTSD, where somebody was exposed to a traumatic experience, no bodily injury, they just saw something horrific, or they went through a very horrific experience, and they have flashbacks over and again, and then you see changes in personality. One being they become impulsive, aggressive, and making bad decisions left and right. So all of those are the executive functions. That part of the brain, so if you look at activities throughout the brain, all different lower brain, cortical areas of the brain, the only part of the brain that really is quiescent, sound asleep, if you will, when we're asleep, is that frontal cortex, and it happens in REM sleep. So if you were to deprive people of REM sleep, so that part of the brain is not getting enough rest, then people tend to become impulsive, aggressive, acting out, changes in personality due to sleep deprivation. So that, hold on, one. I'll be right back. Okay. We're back. Bruce, can they see me?
No, would you like me to put you on camera, Dr. Sadigh? I can absolutely do that.
Hang on one. So what I did was I just took my brain out of my head.
All right.
Can they see it? So this is the area. This is the area that is extremely vulnerable right over here. It's the later development in the brain. So the brain actually develops like this, but it hits the skull, so it has to go like this. So this area, your decision making, your personality, everything is over here. Car makers at one point, I don't know, in the 60s, sometime in one of these decades, discovered that people were hitting the steering wheel, and there were these horrible things, these psychological issues would emerge from it. They would develop all sorts of problems. So they started putting a little cushion on the steering wheel. I think the older steering wheels, I think they were like made of metal. And people banged their head and became very aggressive, and all kinds of bad things happened to them. So they're trying to protect this area of the brain, just right here in front of the brain. Now here's an interesting thing. When you're creative, when you're in a creative state, this part of the brain actually relaxes. There's kind of a level of relaxation that begins to take place in this area. So in REM sleep, other areas of the brain are active. Here, other areas of the brain are active, and in REM sleep, you think about, oh, that's possible. Why not? And that's why dreaming is so critical for creativity. It's because this area of the brain is asleep. So, so 2 Nobel Prizes have been won, more, but people are not honest enough. 2 Nobel Prizes were won because of dreams, because this part of the brain was asleep, and you said, why not? Why don't we do it this way, etc. So, so when you're relaxing and you're not, you stop saying can't be done, can't be done. Creativity kind of breaks it. But this excessive anxiety will damage this area of the brain, not this part of the brain. This is old. This is millions of years old. This is so well constructed back here. I mean, its map is so well developed. It's here that we get that. Chronic anxiety, expect impulsive behavior, acting out behavior. And then we see these 2 areas of the brain in anxious people, much more active on the right side, less active on the left side. We actually see blood flow changes in anxious people, much more over here. What if this happened? What if that happened? This part say, calm down, but the voice is not strong enough. So you need an external voice saying, what are you talking about? So you balance the 2. Great.
So, Dr. Sadigh, we have another question. The question is, so are you saying it has to do with both the psychological and emotional areas of the brain?
Absolutely, absolutely. So then by psychological, psychology, we say study of behavior, which means overt behavior and covert behavior. Covert behavior being thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions are, forms of behavior. So emotions play a significant role in our functioning. So we go into the limbic system, which is a stack of these structures going from the hippocampus. Memory plays an important role to this region that you can't see it over here, but the amygdala, the warning center of the brain, is turned on when we are highly anxious. And affecting the hypothalamic area and all sorts of areas, moving up into the thoughts, our thoughts. So can we use our thinking, positive thinking or whatever, to reduce activity in the limbic system, or can we use emotions to affect thoughts? They are interacting. We talk about it in a classroom that these layers where they're so interconnected, moving seamlessly from one area to the other. We are emotional beings. Thinking is a much later development in our existence. So emotions play a significant role. They can overwhelm us. They can control us to such degree that we can become very destructive, or they can inspire us. So it's really about this talk was about how we use anxiety and whether we gain control over it or it controls us. So psychophysiological. There's the psychology, our thoughts and emotions affecting our physiology, and our physiology being down here, going down the spine and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, doing all kinds of things to the other system, affecting our endocrine system, messing up our hormones, left and right. So it's really the hormonal system, the pituitary. The old medical books used to say this is the master gland. It's not. It's actually the emotional brain that is the master gland that kind of tells this little guy what to do, the little pituitary gland what to do. I hope I answered that question. Please write back if I didn't.
We have another question, Dr. Sadigh. As a clinician, if a patient has a significant ongoing loss of REM sleep, should you be referring out for psych evaluation, or is there a screen that might be used in office prior to a referral?
Loss of REM sleep. I'd like to see actually a sleep study that actually says the person is not receiving enough REM sleep. So loss of REM sleep is a very, very serious condition, and it could has many ramifications. In what disorders do we see reduction in REM activity? We see it in Alzheimer's patients, where the brain's the energy, the electrical activity, the amplitude is dropped significantly. So loss of REM is also common in people who have been exposed to trauma. It could also suggest a growth in the parietal lobe. So we should really look at a sleep study to see if there is REM density or reduction in REM density. So roughly 20 to 25% of the entire full sleep is spent in REM. Shorter REM in the first cycle, and gradually it grows. As we approach the early hours of the morning, REM increases so that memory functions come back. So there's more REM activity. Around 4 o'clock, you actually see increase in REM because we don't go into slow wave sleep, spending more time in those upper stages of sleep. So to me, REM, whatever happens to REM chronically, is both diagnostic and prognostic. And depressed people, we begin to see the increase in REM density, and REM is occupying much of the sleep cycle, and it occurring much earlier at night. Reduction in REM could suggest, because remember, REM plays a significant role in memory, huge role in memory. So reduction in REM would suggest some form of dementia, some disorder. Again, it could not be dementia, but some kind of trauma. But it could suggest that changes in acetylcholine, for example. Its acetylcholine levels go up and start to trigger REM activity. So if acetylcholine levels are low or not produced properly, we're going to see changes in REM. So in what disorder do we see low levels of acetylcholine? Alzheimer's disease. In Parkinson, we don't see reduction in REM, but we see movement in REM. Sleep REM behavior disorder, commonly seen in Parkinson's disease. To me, that's when you see sleep REM behavior disorder. Again, that diagnostic and prognostic, what's going to happen. You see sleep REM behavior disorder again in PTSD, but if it's not PTSD and you see that, then something is interfering with REM, with the pons area that sends that signal, so you should be paralyzed, you shouldn't be moving in REM, and here you're moving. So there's some breakdown in these circuits, but yes, thank you for that question. I would definitely, if you're suspecting some reduction in REM activity, I don't know if he's there in the audience. I hope he is. One of Dr. Glassman's patients, actually, that I did a consult for a few years back, and this lovely lady said to me that as soon as I go to bed, I dream. It's like the whole thing I do at night is dream. And what was behind it was a profound sense of helplessness, and it was actually a manifestation of this depression, that she couldn't deal with the certain situations outside, but she would dream about it extendedly. There was a case of a gentleman that I treated for a number of years, actually, lovely gentleman. Gentleman in his 80s, and he started having serious memory problems, and one of the physicians had suggested that This could be dementia. Very bright. We would talk, and every once in a while he would teach me a little Hebrew. Very bright, but it's like my memory is failing, and they keep telling me. And I said, let's do a sleep study. No, doctor, my sleep is fine. Let's do a sleep study. I convinced the family doctor to do a sleep study. I have actually that record in one of my files over there on that site, redacted and everything, but he had severe sleep apnea. He had such severe sleep apnea. So he didn't get much REM. There was no question about it. But it had to do with sleep apnea. And this gentleman, again, it was in 80, 81, 82, that I saw him. And he died a year ago, so he had kidney issues. But it was once we took care of his sleep apnea, his memory came back. So sleep apnea can also contribute to. REM is a very serious REM dysregularity, dysfunction is a very serious thing to keep in mind. I don't know if you remember 2 years ago when I gave that first lecture, that very first lecture at the conference. I showed you a series of serious disorders, and I showed U.S. #1 is cardiovascular disorder, cancer, and in Canada it was the opposite. Cancer was number. If you go down that list, and I showed you every single one of them, I could show you evidence that lack of sleep, improper sleep, will contribute to dysregulation of your immune system, weight gain, diabetes, etc. Study after study after study. And I said, do whatever you can to, this should be really at the government level, where more support for sleep research and also treatment of sleep disorders. So yeah, those REM dysfunction is very serious. Thank you for that question.
We do have another question, Dr. Sadigh, if you'd like to take another one.
Absolutely, you can take as many as you have.
So someone posted, any advice for those of us that wake up from time to time in that 1 to 3 a.m. range, and I think we all have had that from time to time, and can't get back to sleep related to anxiety or other stressors, any techniques to tame the brain and get back to sleep?
Yes. Thank you for that question. That question comes up quite frequently, and I disagree with a statement that was made by a presenter last year, which was, well, it happens, just get over it. And I disagree. Between the hours of 12 and 3 in the morning is when you produce somatotropin levels. The highest levels of somatotropin are produced during those hours. And so if you're waking up during between 12 and 3 in the morning, I think that is serious, and we should definitely talk about it. I would say the #1 contributor, there could be 10 contributors, #1 contributor is anxiety. A part of you is kind of waking you up to solve a problem. You may not be conscious of it. You could be below the conscious awareness, but something is saying, what if such and such happens? And I am absolutely convinced that in most cases, what is waking you up, the physiology of was waking you up, is increasing glucocorticoid levels. An increase in glucocorticoid levels. So we can do a saliva sample and measure your glucocorticoids, where you wake up at 2 o'clock and measure it, and we send it to a lab and we can measure it. And I think you'll find support for my thesis here. And I know this sounds funny, but I'd like you to try this. If you wake up in the middle of, don't do it, I don't want it to turn into maladaptive behavior. You wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want you to eat a bagel. Eat a bagel. Don't eat like good stuff, fruits and stuff. No. Eat carbs and see what will happen. Please, I'd love to hear from you. Do this. Half a bagel, whatever. Don't put butter and stuff, just good old bagel. And see what happens. If you fall asleep, within a short period of time, my hypothesis was correct because carbs grab onto glucocorticoids and pull them out of your bloodstream. That's why they're called comfort food. So there is actually truth to comfort food, although I don't use the term comfort food. I would say glucocorticoid reducing agent. It actually grabs onto your glucocorticoids, pulls it out, and then you feel calmer, more relaxed. So when you see people late at night want to have ice cream, I have to have my ice cream, they say. They're trying to reduce that glucocorticoid level. So that would be one. And I seriously don't want it to become a maladaptive behavior. So we have to find ways of reducing that anxiety. And my suggestion would be following. Please make, wherever you end up doing this assignment, make it as dark as possible. Make that room as dark as possible. Please do not turn on bright lights all around you. Do not do that. So light is extremely important. Go to a dark corner and do not use your cell phone, and get a piece of paper and jot down. Just do automatic writing. What's bothering you? Just question, an essay. What's bothering you? What's eating you? Just start writing this. And as soon as you get drowsy, when you get drowsy, go to bed. Don't get drowsy and fall asleep then. As soon as you start getting drowsy. So it is very much about anxiety at work. It has very much to do with cognitive forms of anxiety. So I've heard this many times, and this is what I heard, which was one of those dimensions of anxiety. I asked this colleague of mine, says, I don't know, something is wrong with me. Is it menopause? I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't fall. A bunch of questionnaires. I don't want to see so-and-so at work. I don't want to see this person at work. So it was interpersonal anxiety. And either you move to the other side of the campus, quit your job, or how about this? How about start talking to this person? It actually came out of interpersonal anxiety. So that's a magnificent question. I appreciate that. And it's multidimensional, but its physiology is elevated cortisol level. And if you look at cortisol levels go up around 4 in the morning. So when cortisol shifted, moves toward 2 o'clock, that's not good news. That is not good news. And bad part of it is that your sleep is interrupted. You're going to feel tired. And you know what? Mid-morning, you'll feel exhausted. You have no energy, or early afternoon, when that other crash, cortisol crash takes place, you'll have no energy whatsoever. So let's talk about it, and now I'll be happy to help.
All right, another question has rolled in. I have found that the more I stare at phones and computer screens, it can take 2 days for my sleep to return to normal. Once I figured that out, my anxiety about waking up seemed to disappear. I guess that's a little feedback. It might be from the same person.
Yes.
I don't know.
Absolutely. And the light is that light that comes to the computer screen is quite intense. It's quite intense. Even if you were to dim it, once in a while I've done this. Last week my students were going to take a test in the morning, and it was like around 1 o'clock. He said, I wondered, did I publish that instruction? And I go there and turn on my computer and look at it, and yes, published, there's a line in it. And then the next thing is like, oh, I'm wide awake. I might as well, answer some emails, etc. So that light, if you don't mind, I'm going to spend just a minute and talk about it. That's one of the key part of our sleep switch is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is incredibly light sensitive. It's very much light sensitive. So when he perceives light, he's going to turn things on and off, left and right. So that exposure to that bright light says, you know what? Turn off the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus and turn on the TMN. So we are going to produce just a little more orexin. Now, orexin is going to sit there and it's not going to metabolize as quickly. And then the next time you can fall asleep is 4 o'clock, by which time your glucocorticoids are going up, and you have to wake up and you feel at times discombobulated, somewhat overwhelmed. By the way, in conditions such as Alzheimer's disease, you see this, the Alzheimer's disease, most commonly in Alzheimer's, but anytime you see this, I'll show you one way of treating it. It's called sundowning. This is when about 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, people become very upset, they're agitated, they fight, mom was so sweet, and all of a sudden she becomes belligerent. And that has to do with the suprachiasmatic nucleus is not working properly. So there's still light, but it can't function properly. It's breaking down. So it says, oh, it's time to sleep. But it's 6 o'clock. I want to eat. I want to interact with people. Fall asleep. There's a part of them fighting them to stay up, and that fighting comes across as being agitated. So the way you treat that, if you ever see this in your practice, get a full spectrum light. Have family members well versed into how to use this. At about 5 o'clock, have that person sit by a full spectrum light, read something, their skin exposed to it, eyes exposed to it, read something, just and you will see that sundowning disappear, completely disappear. Several studies that have used it with Alzheimer's patients works amazingly. So it has to do with the suprachiasmatic nucleus. By the way, in the elderly, anxiety is tremendous. As we grow older, our fears become fewer, but anxiety goes up. It becomes very intense. Some of it has to do with what was this all about, that meaninglessness part of it. But a lot of it actually has to do with interpersonally. Are they going to abandon me? Who's going to take care of me? Why do you keep telling me, oh, you told us that, or whatever, repeating itself to begin to withdraw. So, great question. Anything else for me?
I think that wraps up the questions, but I do also want to note that there were several folks who thanked you for your time and putting out some really great information tonight, Dr. Sadigh.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, and thank you so much, Bruce. I look forward to seeing all of you again, and maybe the next time we'll just set up something that will be just seeing your faces and asking questions instead of I just have to say I cannot thank you enough, Bruce, for staying up and producing this. This is our angel on this campus who keeps this whole place together, directing our IT department. So thank you, Bruce. Thank you so much. And I wish you all a good night's rest, and look forward to seeing you down the road someday. So stay in touch, and good night.